Now that I've listened to this, I went back and listened to the first album. American football fans are going to hate me for this. It's not that I don't think it's a classic. I guess I wasn't in the right time for it.
Wow, how could you? I'm walking away.
Well, that was Frankie, guys. He didn't actually walk away. He's still in the corner. So we're just going to be awkward for a minute, I guess. Yeah, just cough on screen, why don't you? Hello, everybody. The music fan is here. I'm bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses.
Music to the masses!
Yeah! And I brought a friend back. You remember Frankie with our little talk on Automata 1 and 2. But I brought him back for his expertise on this next album that we're going to be talking about.
What's up, guys? Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe.
Thank you. So what are we talking about today?
We are going to review American Football, LP3.
Just entitled American Football, like every other album that they've had. Now, I haven't really listened to a lot of American Football. This is a band that Frankie's been telling me about for probably years now. So what do you know about this band?
Yeah, so their claim to fame, they're one of the OG pioneers of the emo revival movement in the early 2000s. They put their self-titled American Football out, I believe, in 1999, and it got a cult following afterwards. And it was one of those bands where they recorded it in college, and after they graduated, they just broke up because they didn't plan on touring and continuing on. So that one album really took off and sort of had a cult following. They're known for their dual lead guitar parts and very noodly guitar in funky tunings. And it really influenced other bands down the line, like The Used and, mainstreamers like My Chemical Romance, etc. It seems like they fell off the face of the earth until they kind of reunited in 2014. They put out an album, LP2.
LP2.
And now it's LP3.
Yeah. Very interesting band with not a lot of creative title names. But when I hear emo bands, I think of course, My Chemical Romance. I think of that particular scene. And when you first listen to this band, it's much more hypnotic. It's much more trancey. I would say even has a little bit of shoegaze in this type of band, where it's very minimalist in its style, but it's very beautiful.
Yeah, definitely some jazz influences too, with the noodly dueling guitar parts, for sure.
Some trumpet on there, marimbas.
Yeah.
Frankie's been telling me about this band for a long time, and this CD was on my radar. Took a listen, we both did, and we're gonna share what we think. So, what were some first thoughts for you on this particular album?
I thought the production was really good. The positives is that I think it's a memorable album. I feel like a lot of the tracks, they flow together. And I'm really a big fan of the song Doom in Full Bloom. I think that they do a great job of doing their, what they're sort of known for, of having the, like I said, the noodly guitar licks, the dueling leads, and cool outro. Really good lyrics, talking about meaningful subjects. They're not talking about high school romance and stuff like they did in their first LP, because now they're a bunch of middle-aged dudes. But they do have some good lyrical content.
They do. The lyrics do shine through because of the minimalist approach to a lot of the arrangements, where you're not getting a lot of building, but you are getting a lot of interesting layering ideas. So, like Frankie was saying, these people are in their middle ages now. All of them either are married or have been married at some point. So a lot of these lyrics are talking about married life and whether or not it's getting stale. Like the first song on the album, Silhouettes, is about one of the main people cheating on their wife, and someone else cheating on their husband, and having this impromptu sescapade and feeling horrible about it, but also wanting to do it again. And it's very interesting if you read the last line. It's like, as soon as the war ends, I'll come back to you, when the war itself is the war of the relationship. Yeah. What I like is not just the minimalist arrangements, but the minimalist lyrics. Like the idea that they're repeating, "Oh, the muscle memory continues to haunt me," which is the muscle memory of this act that they created. I think it works well on a lot of songs. The first five I really enjoy. Silhouettes, Every Wave to Rise, Uncomfortably Numb, Heir Apparent and Doom and Bloom, like you were talking,
Mm-hmm.
I think all 5 of them work very well and have very interesting layering ideas. I think the instrumentation is beautiful, and it's not something that I was ready for when I hear an emo band.
Well,
yeah.
You can't just call them emo.
Well, I know,
it's
fair.
so unfair.
Oh no, and that's not
it just had all these negative connotations.
No. That's not what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think with anybody, I think when you hear a certain genre, you have your own mentalities of a certain genre. And when I think emo, I think a little bit harder. I think a little bit more fast-paced guitars. I think a little bit more distortion.
Yeah, that's true. There's definitely that, that punk influence.
And I don't hear any of that on here, and that's not a bad thing at all. This CD is full of a lot of very depressing lyrics, but at the same time, it feels so calming. It feels so meditative. Like, I could listen to this in the background while doing other things.
Yeah.
And I think that is both a positive and a negative for this band.
Yeah, I mean, it's Mike Kinsella's voice is very soft and a little bit less rock oriented.
Right.
But yeah, it definitely gels with what they're trying to do in the aesthetic and whatnot.
What did you think about the guest vocalist on the album?
I thought that it was neat that they were able to, get a few good faces on it. Yeah, it's cool to see. It sort of seems like, a lot of groups are coming back and touring again. I actually looked it up in American Football. They had a quote. I think Mike Kinsella was like, "We decided that it was time for a bunch of middle-aged dudes to go back and tour and tune guitars for hours on stage again." So it's kind of cool that a lot of these groups, they would break up or just be on hiatus and just come back. Jawbreaker, a similar thing, just band that completely off the radar, and now they're touring again. So. And
it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know a lot of that scene, but like the people that were on this particular album who guest star seem to be people who have been influenced from this band. So like Hayley Williams being the most prominent person that you would know, does a fantastic job on Comfortably Numb. That arrangement is very simple compared to everything else, but what stands out to me is the interplay between Mike Kinsella and Hayley Williams on that song, especially on the chorus with this like call and response idea, and the fact that they are both playing the opposite ends of the relationship, where this relationship was so easy before, but now as they're getting older, things get harder, and now they're like Mike is looking for a way out, while Hayley is like trying to make sure that he doesn't do anything wrong, and I think the interplay with those work well, but like also Elizabeth Powell is on Every Wave to Rise, and she does some French lyrics and does a fantastic job on there. It's a nice change. And then the only one I will say that doesn't do really anything is Rachel Goswell on I Can't Feel You. All she's doing is just like, I can't hear you, I can't see you, and it's like, doesn't really add anything. Those 3 on there do add a much needed change in the vocal timbre, because Mike Kinsella is not one note, but he's very calm.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm kind of surprised didn't have any other members of the band do too many. I'm sure there's probably one of the people that might have done some additional backing vocals, but I'm kind of surprised that they don't have anyone else to. I know on LP1 they have another person do vocals on a few of the songs, at least backing, that you can definitely tell. I'm kind of surprised they don't do that. I feel like that could have been an opportunity, but it's not the end of the world.
One other thing that I want to say for Pro real quick before we get on to our complaints. We talked about the arrangements being simplistic, but at the same time, I love the way that they play around with timing. So like, the idea on the first song being a lot of it being in 7/4, but then it gets to this part where it has an idea where it's like 9 measures of 3/4, which makes it, this more interesting and like kind of uneven section. But like the 2 that stand up to me the most are Every Wave to Ever Rise. I don't know if you noticed this, but in the chorus, the drums are playing in 4/4, but the guitar and the bass are playing in 3/4. So it has this idea of one's playing in 4, one's playing in 3, and it's just this really jarring sound that like at first you're like, why does this feel off? But it's like because they're they're both in two different ideas that eventually will combine together but create this really cool idea. And then the other one is Doom and Foam Bloom. The idea is it's first 2 measures of 5/4 and then 2 measures of 6/4.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really cool ideas that you can hear because of the simplicity of the arrangements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely the jazzy influences and the time signatures. It's one of their trademarks, and yeah, I agree with you.
So that's something that they've done from the beginning?
Yeah. Yeah, they have some funky drum beats, you know, on some of the first 2 as well.
What are your disagreements or your cons on this particular album?
Okay, so you know what? I do have a few complaints about the album. The biggest one it stems from, I think they played a little bit too safe. It does remind me a lot of LP3, very similar. I just think that they could have experimented a little bit more. One of my complaints is that in some of the outros, they don't use any distortion. Actually, on the whole album, I don't think they use any distortion whatsoever. And I don't want them to go out and try to, you know, be chug. That's not their genre. I understand that, but and some of the outros, you know, Doom and Full Gloom, I think it would have been great if they had some type of distortion at the end, just to give contrast. Same thing with soloing. They could have had more opportunities, or at least a couple songs, to have a mini solo. I know they're not a soloing and shredding band. I don't want them to be a shredding band, but I think it would be cool in some of the outros to have some type of solo. It seems like a lot of times they follow the same formula of, you know, the main part, the guitars, and then it'll have a minute or 2 of an outro of a similar idea. Where they could really experiment, they could layer with some cool delay and reverb effects. And don't get me wrong, they definitely use delay a lot, but I think it'd be cool if they do some really kind of funky delay, or funky reverb, whoever their engineer that did the album was. So that's my complaint. I just think they play a little bit too safe. I'm always going to compare them to their LP1. Right. Because for better or for worse, that's going to happen when you're known for that one album that was over a decade ago, and they come back to do, you know, more albums down the road.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, it's going to happen. I think it's still a solid album.
Right.
And like I was saying, you know, the lyrics are really good, the vibe's good. I think it's a memorable album. So.
And I do agree with him on the idea of wanting a little bit more. I think the beautiful nature of a lot of these songs, don't get me wrong, a lot of them are really interesting. Like, just the guitar work on a lot of these songs, my favorite being on Every Wave to Ever Rise. Just like, because of the fact that it changes into a little bit more strummed chord ideas that are just beautiful in the tunings. There's a lot of really interesting ideas when you get down to it. But the problem that I have is that the beauty is a gift but also a curse. Because I am fine with slow burns. I'm totally fine with songs that are longer if there's a payment for the build-up. I don't think a lot of these songs ever get to a build-up or a payment. I always feel like it's kind of all level.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, they have opportunities for that, like Doom in Full Bloom.
Aaron.
They have the opportunity for that in those outros, and I feel like they kind of squander it.
It's always just really level. It's a very meditative album, but because of that, you have a lot of songs that are, it's an 8-track CD. So, and it's about 45 minutes. So
at least you get a few songs that are 7 minutes.
7 minutes, 8 minutes. Like, Silhouettes is a great song, but there's a lot of space. Same thing with Aaron Parent, same thing with Doom in Full Bloom, that it would be so much better if there was a little bit more, whether it's layering or getting a contrast in sound or changing up the tempo, where then this space would be much more bearable.
Yeah.
And I also think also with the minimalist the lyrics sometimes, that is also a problem. Like, on the last couple of songs, there's a lot more space in the lyrics, where there's a lot more time where there isn't lyrics, and the arrangements themselves aren't as interesting. So you're left with a lot of open space and not much movement. The problem that I have is that, like, once you get past the first 5 songs, it's not that you're hearing everything the same, it's just there isn't much of a contrast in sound to make you feel like you have gone on an experience. Like you've gone on a journey where there's a starting and an ending. It just feels like everything is a little bit level. It just doesn't change.
That's the thing. I think, adding on to that, everything's too level. It seems like, the production quality is great and everything's great, but it seems like I think they could have pushed themselves a little bit more in the studio when they were recording this. So,
and like the last song on the album, Life Support, is great. It does remind me a lot of Radiohead, particularly Letdown from OK Computer. But again, it just shows of where it could have been. Because like Let Down builds so well. It's a fantastic layering song. Life Support is great, but it doesn't do enough to be like an amazing, powerful outro. We both agree. I think if there was just a little bit less pristine and a little bit more edge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just a little bit of grit in small doses would be pretty good.
I do enjoy a lot of the experimenting on the first album, but to me, there's something with that quality of production that just doesn't work for me. On LP3, I'm fine with where it is in terms of production quality, but the problem is that it's a little bit too pristine. If you could mold those kind of sounds together from LP1 and LP3 into something that's very good in quality but a little bit harsher, you got yourself a fantastic album. But still, this is really good. I enjoy my experience with it. I will go back to it a lot, and I think it brings up a lot of interesting lyrics about midlife crisis and like feeling stagnant in life. I think it brings it up in a very interesting way, especially, since we're now, in our late 20s. Not saying that that's where we are, but
we're all dead, man.
Yeah, exactly. We're all gone,
Pack
guys.
it up.
This video doesn't even matter, guys. It just brings up stuff that I myself have thought about at times.
Yeah,
and it's relatable, at least for our age. So like,
definitely stuff about like long-term relationships versus new things. It's a different dynamic.
Any last thoughts before we give it a score?
Definitely check it out. They are touring, and I'm going to see them in May of 2019. It's going to be good, hopefully.
Maybe I'll join. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know.
That could have been the reasons why they're touring, because they, in support of LP3. Definitely give it a listen. If you're a fan of the band, if you're a fan of alternative and emo movement, or post-emo, whatever you want to call it. I still don't like calling stuff emo. I feel like it's a dirty word, for better or for worse, I don't know. I think it's good. I think that it's really good. Like I was saying, it's good for a very meditative, and just the layering of guitars is really good. So the pros, like LP2 and LP1, really good guitar layering, really good lyrics, and production's great. Just the cons, I just think that because of the pedigree, they could have had a little bit more ambitious goals when they went into this. And I'd say I'd give it a 7 out of 10. I know that's harsh. Other people have rated higher than me on some of the other big reviewer sites, but 7 out of 10. I just think that from where they're at as their third album, a lot of bands, that by the time they make album 3, it's their peak. And it just seems like they're not there yet. So
I'm not too far off in the grade as well. For my first dive into this band, I really enjoy it. It was an unexpected surprise that just really quickly I was able to dive in emotionally to it. And I think it's because of how accessible the sound is. Even if they play around with the timing of everything, I think it's a very accessible sound just because of how minimalist it is. And even because of the noodling of the guitars, it makes the bass and the drums stand out more when it's more interesting. The bass is not really anything special in terms of noodling itself, but it's the rhythmic ideas and how strong it is on the rhythmic ideas. If you listen to Heir Apparent, you hear it always go on the offbeat of the next measure, which stands out because everything else around it is really noodly and atmospheric, whereas this is more solid. I think there's a lot of really cool ideas. I just wish that I wish that there felt some sort of progression.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially since they used to be a power trio, and obviously they overdub the guitars and they'll have more guitar tracks. And when they're live, they probably have 4 or 5 people, including the marimba player and whatnot. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. It would be good to see the bass be a little bit more noodly, sort of like how the guitars are, at least in certain points. I'm not expecting them to go nuts or anything, but yeah, there are parts where I think the bass could be a little bit more ambitious.
So basically, for me, I would say if you're looking for a chiller side of this particular scene, this is definitely one to look out for. If you're looking for something calm, this is great. Even though the lyrics themselves aren't necessarily happy, like it's something that you can get really in touch with. And just know that, like, once you hear a couple of songs, you're not going to be getting much difference in style. And because of that, like, I love the first 5 songs, but I think the last 3 aren't too interesting. And because of that, I'm going to give it a 7.5. I was thinking about giving it an 8, but once I heard it a couple more times, it's like, I can't give an album that if the last 3 songs aren't really memorable. So I guess I have 2 more questions for you. If you are someone new to American football, would you give them this album first, or would you give them the LP one?
You have to start at LP one first. I do, because they're known for that. That's what their bread and butter's for. People seeing them live are probably going to think about the LP one, definitely more than LP 2 and LP 3. So that's where the natural starting point is.
Okay, and then comparatively to the last album, is it better or worse than their previous album?
I think it's very similar. That's honestly a tough question. I do like LP2. I think that some of the drumming and just the song layering and textures, there's a little bit more variety, I think, in LP2, where from the beginning of a song to the end of a song, the drumming changes a bit more than in LP3. But also, I think that LP3 is a little bit more memorable, I will say, because LP2, in my opinion, there are peaks and valleys. There are a couple of really good songs that I like, and there are other songs that are just skip. It's my sense of that. So I think LP3 is a little bit better, but it's similar.
Okay.
Similar.
And that honestly seems to make sense. But I'm guessing what with LP3, with everything being very evenly layered, I'm assuming the same thing for the others. But again, still not a bad CD. Definitely check it out if any of what we just said interests you. But that is our time. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you again, Frankie, for joining me. I definitely would love to do more album reviews. We actually have
what's coming up next?
Well, coming up next, I think we have 2 more metal ones I'm going to be doing, but I'm not going to say just yet on them. But if you're looking for something if you're looking for something a little bit harder and a little bit more experimental, you're going to enjoy the next 2 albums. But I've also talked with Frankie on this, and somewhere down the road, we will definitely be talking about Digging Through Discography with Nirvana at some point in time.
Yeah.
Or even Alice in Chains, since we've been going over grunge stuff. If you want to see him, you got to let me know in the comments, because we can definitely talk a lot about music. And of course, if you do enjoy this album, let me know what you like or hate about it. Give this video a like, share this with your friends, and mostly subscribe to my channel if you enjoy what we are doing and want to see more of it. The best way that you can do it is by just hitting that subscribe button. Subscribe! Exactly. Let's see how many times we can say subscribe in the next 10 seconds. Yeah, exactly. It helps us out a lot. So thank you so much. This has been The Music Fan. This has been Frankie, and we're signing off.
See ya.